This episode of Chilling Tales for Dark Nights is brought to you by Mood. Hey, summer might be coming to an end, but the party isn't over until we say it is, right? Let's keep that summer relaxation going for a while with Mood. Mood is the finest source out there for federally legal THC products, all tailored by their in-house experts for just the mood you're after. From energized products to chill products and everything in between, you'll find it in gummies, flower, vapes, and more. And be sure to try their new Sexual Euphoria THC gummies with ingredients known to boost libido and arousal. See that? Steve's always looking out for you. Already missing summer before it's over? Run it back with 20% off your first order and free gummies. Go to HelloMood.com and use promo code CHILLING. That's HelloMood.com code CHILLING for 20% off your order and free gummies.
Chilling Tales for Dark Nights.
Want to make sure you never miss a Chilling Tales for Dark Nights video again? Be sure to subscribe and hit that bell to turn on notifications. It's time to turn off the lights and turn on the dark.
Chilling Tales for Dark Nights.
Good evening, listener. You're listening to Chilling Tales for Dark Nights. On tonight's edition, we invite you to leave behind your safe reality and descend with us into the frightening depths of the most terrifying imaginations with two audio adaptations of frightening fiction about ethereal encounters and recollective revenge. I'm your host, Steve Taylor, and tonight I'll be your guide as we traverse the dimly lit corridors of your darkest dreams. Joining us tonight to help bring to life the frightening fiction of Ronald McGillvray and Sarah Jane Huntington, our voice talent Steve Gray, Justine Anastasia, Danielle Hewitt, featuring myself, Steve Taylor, Rissa Montanez, Olivia Steele, Erik Peabody, and Michelle Kane. Now, get your ticket ready, take your seat in our theater of the minds, and brace yourself. It's time to turn off the lights and turn on the dark. Our first tale this evening is written by Ronald McGillvray and performed by Steve Gray, Justine Anastasia, and Otis Jiry. Nothing can be more unnerving than being jolted out of a restful sleep by the unexpected ringing of a telephone. And the caller's words, well, we're about to find out just what they were. Now, without further ado, I present to you a late night call.
June 1998. The phone rang, waking Frank in the middle of the night. "Hello?" he muttered, still half asleep.
"Help me,"
a faint woman's voice pleaded. The line went dead. "Hello? Hello?" Frank gripped the receiver, wide awake now. The voice spooked him with its eerie cry for help. The buzzing sound of a disconnected line sent a shiver down his spine. He hated late-night calls. It was always bad news. He wanted to press the code and see what number had called, but he couldn't remember how to do it. The voice seemed familiar, though. Frank hung up the receiver, stretched out under his blankets, and stared up at the dark ceiling. The room was pitch black, and he couldn't make out a thing, but he had a strange feeling he wasn't alone. He held his breath and listened. Nothing. He continued to lie there, but with his imagination racing, he had to check it out. He slowly drew his arm out from under the covers and inched it towards the bedside lamp. He felt the base of the lamp and reached up, trying to find the switch. Finally, his fingers came across the switch. He pressed it. Nothing. He pressed it again, but still no light came on. He didn't move a muscle, but listened carefully for any telltale clue he might not be alone. The only sound, though, came from his heart racing inside his chest. Then he remembered. He'd unplugged the light to plug in the vacuum earlier, and must have forgotten to plug it back in. He continued to lie in his bed, frustration building with every second that passed. He bolted from the bed and dashed over to the wall to the light switch. He found it, flipped the switch, and a wash of light lit up the room. A sense of relief came over him when he saw he was alone. The phone rang. He jumped at the sudden noise, but managed to pull himself together once he realized it was only the phone. He walked slowly to the phone as if it might be able to bite him and stared at the receiver. It rang again, and he picked it up. Hello? This time there was just crackling on the line. He could hear sounds somewhere in the background but couldn't make them out. Hello? He said again, only to be answered by more crackling on the line. He put down the phone and looked nervously around the room. He went to the bedroom door, peeked out into the hallway, and then walked slowly to his closet and looked inside. All clear. He felt silly and was glad no one was around to see his childish antics. After one more look around, he flicked the light off and hopped back into bed. The phone rang again. Frank grabbed the phone in the dark, almost ripping the cord from the wall. What? Nothing but more crackling. Fed up, Frank was about to slam the receiver down when, through the crackling, he thought he heard a woman crying. Hello? Is anybody there? He asked. More static. Then,
Dear God, can anybody hear me? Please help me. I'm alone, and I can hear it coming.
the phone went dead. Frank sprang from his bed and hit the light switch as he stormed by it. His toes dug into the rug, muffling the sound of his footsteps as he made his way down the hallway. He flew down the stairs, turned on the hall light, and yanked open the drawer of the hall table that held the phone. He found what he was looking for and carried the ancient phone book to the couch. He threw himself on it and began rifling through the pages. Then he found it. Star 69, the code to find out the number of the last caller. He walked back to the phone with a grin of accomplishment, picked up the receiver, and pressed the code. After the message ended, the grin faded from his face. It seemed the last caller was him. He remembered the call vividly, made from his office earlier in the day. He had called to remind himself that his dry cleaning would be ready for pickup the next day. Why hadn't the last call come up? He wondered as he climbed the stairs. He had just made it back to the bedroom when the phone began to ring again. He raced to the phone and snatched the receiver from its cradle. "Who are you?" More crackling filtered down the line. "Who is this? What kind of game are you playing?" Breathing heavier after his verbal assault on the phone, he listened, but nothing more than crackling could be heard. Had he surprised the caller with his aggressiveness? He hoped so. Maybe it would be enough to get them to stop calling. Then the same faint female voice drifted through the crackling.
Is anybody there? Please help me. If anyone can hear me, please do something. I'm trapped here and I can hear it coming. I'm at AU1 5555. My address is...
The phone went dead. Frank couldn't move. That voice, it was so haunting. It had to be some childish prank. Yet he couldn't get over how sincere the voice sounded. Whoever she was good at this game. Good enough to have given him a real fright. He finally realized he was still holding the phone when it began beeping at him. He hung up immediately, then picked up the line again and pressed 0.
Operator, may I assist you?
Yes, I'm hoping you can. I've been getting crank calls this evening that I can't trace by pressing star 69, and I wondered if you could help me.
What is the nature of the call, sir?
It's a woman pleading for help. She says something's coming, but I'm sure it's a prank.
Have you notified the authorities?
No, I just called you because I'd like to know where the calls are coming from.
1 minute, please.
Frank waited as a barrage of the company's products and service played on endlessly. He looked around the room absent-mindedly, and again began to feel he wasn't alone.
We have recorded no calls coming to your home phone number this evening.
The woman on the phone told me her number was AU1-5555. I'm sure it's a false number, but maybe that will help.
I think someone is trying to pull your leg, sir.
Yes, I realize that, but what am I supposed to do?
No, sir, I mean that phone number no longer exists. It was an old exchange that is no longer in use.
What do you mean?
Those numbers were used for party lines and haven't been in existence for over 50 years.
Is there any other way I can track down where the calls came from?
I suggest if the calls persist, you call the authorities. Perhaps they can tap the line for you. Is there anything else I can help you with this evening, sir?
No. Thanks anyway. He hung up the phone no further ahead than he had been when he started. He reached down, found the bedside lamp's plug, and placed it back into the socket. The glow of the single light lit up the room but created many new shadows that added to the creepiness of the entire incident. He thanked God he wouldn't have to get up for work in the morning, as he didn't work Mondays. He looked over at the phone as if expecting it to ring again, but decided he had had enough for the evening and took it off the hook. The next day, he found himself raring to go. It was as if during his brief sleep he had subconsciously come up with a plan. After getting dressed and grabbing a quick bite to eat, he was out the door and headed to the public library. Once there, he put his plan into effect. Frank went through index after index of microfiche until he eventually found what he was looking for. The last known subscriber to AU1-5555. It was a Harold Breton of 93 Oak Street in Alteville. That city rang a bell, but he couldn't figure out from where. He was sure it was within driving distance of his home, though. Alteville, it turned out, after he checked out on the map, was only an hour's drive down the highway, along the banks of the St. Lawrence Seaway that connected the American and Canadian borders. As the next day was July 1st, and he didn't have to work, he decided he would drive to Alteville and check it out. Luckily, his sleep that night was uninterrupted. The sun was shining, and it was a perfect day for a drive, so he didn't waste any time getting underway. He made it to the Seaway in no time and began snaking his way through the small villages looking for Alteville. He eventually spotted a sign pointing away from the road and toward the waterfront. He turned onto the road and followed it for a while until it became a dirt road. He continued down the bumpy dirt road until it ended abruptly with two metal posts blocking the way. He sat in his car wondering what he should do. His curiosity finally got the better of him and he parked the car and got out to have a look around. He didn't see a town, only forests as far as the eye could see. Just after the posts, a small dirt walking path led to the waterfront. He decided to follow it. Water began to creep up on both sides of him as the forest receded into the background. He looked around, but there wasn't a soul in sight. Then why did he have the feeling he wasn't alone? After walking for a bit, shoreline came into view. Shaped like a cove, the shoreline meandered away in the distance. There was still no town he could see, nor any people for that matter. He gazed across the water and took in his surroundings. Broken rocks and strange boulders littered the shoreline. The trees he passed all appeared to be either dead or dying. He felt like he was in a graveyard.
Help me.
A woman's voice suddenly called out, sending a chill through his body. Frank looked around but didn't see anybody.
Help me.
The voice begged again. He recognized it as the same voice that had called the other night. As he walked along the shoreline, something deep in the water caught his eye. It was a light, or at least he thought it was a light. He stopped in his tracks and turned toward where he thought he'd seen it and watched carefully. From somewhere in the depths of the water, a single light blinked on and off. He felt a coldness run through him like he had never experienced before. He slowly backed away from the water's edge. He felt like if he got too close to the water, something might reach out and grab him, pulling him down into the depths toward the mysterious light. He sidestepped along the shoreline, giving himself a wide berth from the water's edge, but continued looking out into it. Again, from somewhere below the waterline, a light flashed on and off. Could someone be trapped down there? A diver, perhaps? Where the hell was the town? He needed to find somebody to help him because the place was giving him the creeps. He yelled out for help. There was nothing but silence, yet the light continued to blink its lonely signal from the deep. He needed to get out of there and find help. He ran along the waterfront and got back onto the path that led to his car. When he arrived at the metal posts, he knew he had a problem. The car was gone. He ran along looking for his car but had no luck. He sat in a gully on the side of the road and waited in vain for someone to drive by. After a half hour of waiting for a passing motorist, he decided it wasn't going to happen. He resigned himself to the fact he'd have to make his way back to the highway on foot, so he started walking. As it became darker, he scolded himself for not having set out earlier. He was walking along the gloomy dirt road toward the highway when he suddenly heard rustling in the bushes just to his left. He picked up his pace, but so did the rustling. What kind of a nightmare had he gotten himself into? He began to sprint down the road when the rustling turned into a thunderous roar. It sounded like the trees were crashing all around him. In a panic, he tripped, falling to the ground hard. If he was hurt, he didn't know it, or didn't care because he was up and running again. He thought he was gaining some ground when a thunderous crash rang out from just ahead. He barely had time to stop before a huge tree crashed down in front of him. Lying on the ground, panting, Frank thought he might start to cry. He was alone in some godforsaken forest with something he couldn't see hunting him down and night coming on quick. He continued lying there until he couldn't hear anything moving anymore. He looked around and everything seemed back to normal, or as normal as things could be out here in the middle of nowhere. He got up, brushed himself off, and examined the mess in front of him that now blocked the road. After examining it, he decided he didn't want to try climbing over it, especially with no one around to help him out if he got hurt. High above him circled a murder of crows, and Frank wondered if they knew something he didn't. He turned and made his way back to where the car had been. There was no more rustling or crashing in the forest, only complete silence. As night approached, so did the bugs, and they were ferocious. After a dozen bites, he decided he'd be drained of blood by morning if he stayed put, so he headed back to the waterfront. He hoped by the water the bugs wouldn't be as bad, but not being an outdoorsman, he had no idea what to expect. On arrival back at the waterfront, the blinking light in the water greeted him. From where he stood, he couldn't see much, but as he peered into the water, he could make out shapes underneath the murky water. He looked around for a better vantage point and found what he was looking for. Just down the shoreline was a tall clump of rocks. He carefully climbed to the top, sat down, and searched the water for the light. There it was, going on and off like a camera flash. He must be hallucinating because what he saw looked like an entire town under the water. Altsville? He waited patiently on top of his perch for the next flash of light. When it lit up again, Frank strained to take it all in. Sure enough, there beneath the water were different types of buildings. He continued his vigil well into the night until finally fatigue overcame him and he fell into a deep sleep.
Help me, Frank.
A scared voice called out. "What do you want from me?" he answered back.
I'm alone and so afraid. I can hear it coming. Please do something.
Hear what? What can I do?
Come get me, Frank. Save me.
She begged, crying. Frank found himself on a hill looking down at the homes below. There was a sign. It read Altsville in small black letters. Although he didn't know what was happening, he knew this was a dream he wanted to wake up from but couldn't.
Help me. You're so close. Can you hear it coming?
I don't know where you are, and I can't hear anything. What are you doing to me?
You have to help me, Frank. You're my only hope. Hurry, it's coming.
What's coming? Stop talking in riddles. What do you want from me? He cried out in frustration.
Follow the light,
she answered. Like in most dreams, everything moved in slow motion. He seemed headed towards town, but never got any closer, no matter how much he walked. Then he saw the light. From an upstairs room of a house, it blinked on and off. On and off. He was able to make out the street name at the corner closest to the house. Oak Street. The same street he had looked up earlier at the library. He continued his fruitless walk toward the town. But although he appeared to be getting no closer, with each step taken, he was able to see things more clearly. He could see a form in the window now, like a shadow illuminated by the light. Was it her? A deafening sound filled the air, a similar noise to what he had heard following him in the forest earlier. What was it? It seemed much more intense now. Frank became scared.
Hurry, Frank, it's almost here. Help me before it's too late.
His legs felt like they were running through deep mud. He frantically tried to get free and felt panic begin to stretch his nerves. Should he try to run away? He knew he couldn't. He had to help this woman, whatever the cost, but he didn't know why. He edged down the hill as best he could, his legs straining against whatever force was slowing them down. As the horrible sound grew closer, panic set in with Ernest. He reached the bottom of the hill and found himself on street level. After fighting with his legs to get down the hill, he had managed to lose sight of the house. He frantically looked around trying to get his bearings, but it was hard to concentrate with the sound of the roaring thunder in his ears. He yelled out to the mysterious voice. "Where are you? Call out to me so I can find you." If she was calling out to him, he couldn't make it out over the horrific noise. He ran down the vacant streets. Where was everybody? Didn't they hear the thunderous maelstrom heading their way? Street after street he searched, turning one corner after another, almost deafened by the sounds around him, and finally he spotted it. At the top of the street, a house with a light on its upper floor blinking on and off like an SOS. He had found it. Or was it too late? The next thing he knew, he was at the house, but how had he got down there? It didn't matter. He ran to the front door, burst into the house, and called out to her. He made his way through the house, but could hear nothing but the roar which seemed all around him. He tried to wake himself again from this nightmare, but he couldn't. He charged up the stairs to the deafening sounds of explosions and snapping wood. Disoriented, he wasn't sure which way to go. All the doors were shut, and the racket around him prevented him from hearing her cries. Door after door he swung open to nothing. He finally found the room, but to his horror, he was too late. Tied to a chair, her lifeless body stared at him accusingly. She had been stabbed to death. The murder weapon lay by her feet, covered in blood. Once again, panic coursed through his body. His mind started to come apart. He staggered through the room like a drunken man, crying into his hands, all sense of rationality leaving him. He was going mad. The sound of a thunderclap broke him momentarily from his trance, and he staggered to the window overlooking the town below. He gazed out the window, and his blood stopped. A wall of water, higher than he could have ever imagined, tore through the town, headed straight toward him like a freight train, snapping buildings and homes into tinder. It ripped a path of destruction directly toward him. He had just enough time to let out a scream before the single light blinked off for the last time.
Thank you.
A woman's faint voice called out. The next day, 3 fishermen found what they thought was a man sleeping on top of a cluster of rocks. On closer inspection, they found they'd been wrong. Soaking wet and his mouth filled with water, the man was dead. The fishermen scanned the shoreline for others who may have met the same fate, but all they found was the black end of a car sticking out of the water. The next day, the local newspaper ran this story.
After an exhaustive search by the police diving team, the remains of Mary Breton were found tied to a chair in the room that was once her Altsville home. Authorities believe her now-deceased husband, Harold Breton, was responsible and are labeling it a murder. There's always been speculation that many townspeople rid themselves of their dirty laundry when the Americans and Canadians agreed to open the St. Lawrence Seaway for larger boat traffic. The notice had been given that on July 1st, 1958, Altsville, as well as a few other towns along the Seaway, would soon be underwater after the opening of the dam upriver. All residents were helped, if needed, to relocate possessions out of the area. Although much was moved, just as many things stayed behind to face the torrents of water that would soon engulf this sleepy village. At this time, there's no explanation how Frank Mason or his car managed to end up where they did. Locals, however, speak of a rumor concerning the missing Breton child who disappeared one winter's day. Many speculated that Marie spirited the child away to another family because of Harold's abusive temper. Locals who are familiar with the family remark how the dead body of Frank Mason had a remarkable likeness to Harold himself. Others just chalk it up to another mystery of the lost villages of the Seaway.
I hope you enjoyed A Late Night Call, as written by Ronald McGillvray and performed by Steve Gray, Justine Anastasia, and Otis Jiry. Jeez, my phone actually rang during that story. Scared the bejesus out of me. Turned out it was just someone concerned about my car's extended warranty. Ronald McGillvray is a writer from Ottawa, Canada. He's published short stories, scripts, novellas, and his most recent novel, Cutters Deep. He is currently working on a new novel which will be out soon. His horror short story collection, Tales from the Parkland, is available as a print or ebook. Our second tale of the evening is written by Sarah Jane Huntington and performed by Danielle Hewitt, featuring myself, Steve Taylor, Rissa Montanez, Olivia Steele, Erik Peabody, and Michelle Kane. This tale features both crime and punishment of the most sinister kind. Now, without further ado, I present to you The Void.
Now. Kate cuts a lonely figure as she stumbles towards the ramshackle slanted house that sits both bravely and defiantly alone. A crooked home in a mirror world, one of obscure shadows and grim emptiness. A reverse, a shade, a memory, a ripple in a pond of former vibrancy. The edge of the void. Her body feels weighted down, impossibly heavy and crude. In the distance, on the highest jagged hill within sight, a cluster of shapes wandered along its spine. To Kate, they resemble paper cutout figures, each linked closely together, hands joined, heads down low. Silently, she steps forward up the twisting spiral path. For her, there is no point in making the journey into the burning city. Not anymore. Now she knows hope itself has died in its own inelegant death. The house is abandoned, of course. She can feel its emptiness and hunger for company in her soul. Black moss grows up the side of the small house, and rotten ivy trails along the roof. A relentless takeover by nature, or some twisted version of it. Kate pushes at the half-decayed door. It creaks eerily, but doesn't resist her touch. Furniture lays in the ruins inside, scattered toys and broken dishes. All discarded in the owner's rush to leave, she supposes. But still, Only a remnant, a haze, a dead season. Hello? She instinctively calls out anyway. Her voice is muffled, underwater, hardly a sound. She explores the small home to make sure it's empty of any form of life before she claims it as her own. Kate finds nothing but bare room after bare room. Each one is stripped down to its most basic core of a damp, rotten mattress and stained floor. Outside, she hears the frantic flapping of a boat's rotten sails caught in the wind. She knows the sound has a secret meaning. Wings. Thick, leathery wings that belong to a wicked flying beast. She hears frantic whispers, gently at first, a small suggestion of noise, until quickly, her sanctuary is surrounded. Kate cannot remain unseen. She holds her hands over her ears and throws herself down into the nearest corner. Thick cobwebs touch her skin, her hair, her mouth. She screams silently at the invasion. She clamps a hand over her mouth, fueled by instinct, and freezes. For a few beats, the only sound is her frantic heartbeat thundering in her ears. How can my heart still beat? She thinks. It's broken after all. Let it be quick, she whispers. Please, God, let it be quick. Kate knows that if God exists, then he or she cannot hear her plea. Not here. Not now. God appears to be absent. A single tear falls down her cold cheek as she shivers. The will to live, to survive, seeps out of her like blood. The whispers sense the change and prepare to feast. Kate always liked to imagine she had a chair in her head, a small wooden one in which she used to sit. She conjures up the idea now. In her mind, she sits and watches her happy memories play on a screen set out in front of her simple chair. She sees one of her parents, from years before, a replay stored inside her brain and recorded without her knowledge. She sees Jack. Perfect Jack. Until her own mind betrays her too. His face alters without her meaning to change it, to the last moment she saw him. His features turn afraid, riddled with deceit, infected by association. She sees his strong hands, blood-covered traitor hands. In the absence of a realm without a creator, she thinks and has no idea why. The absence of life in the abhorrent, not a void. It was never a void. The whispers descend. The noise becomes deafening in its fury. The sound of her own screams muffles the chaos. Fear breeds anger, deep inside. Kate yearns for blackness, for emptiness, for what might come after the after is finished. She no longer feels the agony, the pain, the terror, the ripping and tearing apart. Anger grows. With it, births a triumph. Fire burns and sparks erupt. Embers pour from her body. The blinding clarity of color in a gray world. A transformation. Revenge is her last coherent thought. Then, Kate watches with interest from the highest, most lonely pew of the auditorium as her professor's voice lulls his students into a steady sleep. His mild German accent has sent each one of his parapsychology students, except for her, into an almost hypnotic state. Outside, a steady stream of rain falls. A single flash of lightning explodes, turning the dark blue sky white for a short, barely there, second. The flash makes an intricate pattern on the back of her eyelids. Now count, Kate reminds herself. She counts to 8 seconds before a rumble of thunder makes itself known. 16 miles away? Or is it 8? She finds she can't remember if the seconds should double or not. A quick glance around tells her that she's the only student still paying attention. She leans forward to hear over the sounds of the storm.
Frequency changes or vibrations of atoms themselves is my theory, among others.
The professor chuckles. He peers over his half-moon glasses at his dreaming crowd.
It is my belief that upon death a vibration occurs, a frequency change. A soul, for lack of a better term, is released and freed into another realm. Now, raise a hand if you're still here, or rather, still aware.
He smiles. Kate raises her hand and waves until the professor's old and humble eyes notice her. "May I ask a question?" She half shouts. "Other realms, other dimensions. Is there any proof they exist? Scientific proof, I mean." The professor taps his pen thoughtfully. He begins to gather his papers and pauses.
Experiments are ongoing, I believe, but the current suggestion agreed upon is the 11. 11 dimensions outside of our visual range. We see so little of what exists on the spectrum of visible light. Less than 2%, in fact. Think of it as tuning a radio. Other stations play, but our metaphysical dial can only be set to 1.
Could we change our dials? In theory, Kate asks.
I don't believe we should, but perhaps save that question for a philosophy class, young lady. The esoteric is not discussed here. You should know that. Class dismissed.
The students below Kate spring to life in a mass exodus of shuffling and bag collecting. Almost all of them will be leaving for Thanksgiving. All but Kate. She shrugs into her old, saggy, and still damp coat. She wraps the itchy wool firmly around her. She grabs her beaten-up leather satchel and walks down the few steps toward the professor. Kate wishes to know more. She yearns for it. The beginnings of questions tumble around in her mind. The professor sees her, and she knows that he sees her. He chooses to pretend he hadn't, and walks swiftly out the private exit, the one meant for staff only. He locks it behind him. Kate stops in her tracks, feeling more hurt than she can explain to herself. I'm invisible. Completely invisible. She waits on the steps until the sounds of happy voices outside the room become distant. She listens to the whoops of joy and feels a stabbing sensation in her heart. Everyone is going home. Except for me. Kate cannot go home. Ever again. Home for her is a distant memory she should have savored, but failed to. Head down, she leaves and walks as if her only destination is an electric chair or gallows. Other students rush past her. Some crash straight into her. And still, no one sees her. No one notices. Kate has been a student at Willinger College for almost a year. Within that time, she has made no friends. Nor has she tried. Only the fierce collection of girls, 3 of them, pay her any attention. And not the good kind. She darts out of the way of a whole group chatting excitedly as she crosses the small quad. The rain pours down and stings her eyes. Willinger's dorm is almost empty as she yanks at the door and stamps her feet on the worn-out mat. All the lights are on brightly, yet somehow, to Kate, it still feels dark. No matter how many lights she uses, it's always too dark for her. The small lounge the students use is empty. Kate pauses and wonders if she should sit by the fire while no one is around and try to get warm. A flurry of footsteps racing down the stairs changes her mind. The 3 girls come down as Kate steps back, half hidden by a bundle of coats hanging on a rack. The scent of expensive perfume and hairspray follows them, The girls rule the college, unofficially, although everyone accepts their reign as fact. They are the ones who get to decide who becomes popular and who is cast down from their circle. They shine their charismatic lights on the few and sneer at the rest. Papers and homework are done for them, by others wanting in on the clique, as they paint their nails, gossip, plot, and plan. Cruelty lives inside each one, a deep vileness, passed and shared from girl to girl. Kate despises them with a passion. As soon as she'd stepped foot on campus, they'd hated her too. Kate with her pretty dark hair, her elfin looks, and her silent mystery. Her refusal to talk or attempt to join their group, her denial of their existence and power. The three girls gather in the lounge, bickering and sounding to Kate like a cluster of chickens. She makes a break for the stairs and takes two at a time until she's clear. Kate pulls at the door at the top of the stairs and vanishes into the hallway.
"She's a disgusting freak!"
She hears one shout. The harsh words ricochet around her mind. A few doors are open as she walks along, head down, determined to get to her room unseen. Different rooms play different music. Rap songs meet her ears, then pop, followed by classical, played by some highbrow student.
"Hey!"
She hears and smacks into a warm chest. She gasps and stops, takes a step back and sees Jack.
"You okay, Kate?"
He asks. Kate sometimes believes she's in love with Jack. He's the only person in the entire college that ever made any effort to speak to her. He's also the token boyfriend of one of the three girls. "I'm fine," she says. "Have a good Thanksgiving."
"Do you want to get a coffee?"
He asks. No, sorry, I can't, Kate tries to smile, but her mouth is dry, sandpaper raw. Her lips stick to her teeth, and her smile becomes a grimace. She scuttles away with her cheeks burning. Her room is the last one along the never-ending corridor. She fumbles in her bag for her keys, fighting her panic. Sweat breaks out across her back even though she shivers. Finally, she unlocks the door and slams it behind her. She throws herself on her unmade bed and sobs. She thinks of Jack, of how he and everyone else goes through life as if they were a tiny duckling. All of them have complete trust in those around them. They swim and paddle together in life, not worrying or caring about what might lay beneath them in the murky water they swim in. Kate does worry. She knows what hides in the dark water. She knows exactly what lies waiting. She knows what kind of thing might reach up and grab. She's seen it before. Kate has secrets. She keeps them locked in a wooden chest, padlocked and chained inside of her mind. Those secrets chase her and snap at her heels, no matter how fast she tries to run. She wakes to complete silence. Darkness has fallen, and the moon sits fat and shines like a spotlight in the night sky. Am I here or there? She thinks. She tests her fingers, lifts them one by one, and then starts on her toes. She can't tell. She feels weighed down, not light. She stretches and feels a tingle. It starts in her belly, warm at first, and it spreads. Kate gives in to the familiar feeling. She's come to enjoy the sensation over the years. At first, she felt nothing but panic and terror. Now a pleasure takes hold, freedom like no other. The hot tingle spreads and turns into a shimmer of electricity. Her skin hums with power as she lifts. She is a mist, a spiraling gray mist. A silver cord that glitters, caught in the moonlight, tethers her to her body. Her body becomes an anchor. The cord her chain as she floats toward the ceiling. Kate thinks of the professor. She thinks of his clever atom theory and vibrations, the radio stations. She can change her dial, her metaphorical tuning fork, and she can do so with ease. A surge of euphoria erupts inside of her as she passes through the ceiling, up through the tired old attic jammed full of broken furniture, and out. Out into the night. Kate cannot feel the biting cold as she glides. She cannot feel the sad looks she's become accustomed to. The degrading stares, the disgust and hatred, the revulsion. She floats along, as if swimming over the empty campus, over the few remaining cars, over the quad with its old benches, over the treetops, the thick bushes. She twirls and spins, lost in her own out-of-body dance. Her cord yanks, preventing her from traveling further. She touches her belly in wonder. At least, the place where her belly should be. She grabs her tether and pulls. She works her way back. A flapping monstrosity flies above, busy with its own needs and desires. Kate has seen them before. She doesn't fear them. They pay her no attention. She wonders if they can even see her. 2 lights in the dormitory blare like beacons in the dark night. Kate cannot resist. She dives toward the light, as if she is nothing more than a moth to a flame. She hovers and peers. The curtains are open in one room. Posters and cliché quotes about love decorate the walls. Jack sits on a lush double bed, surrounded by fluffy pillows. He is bare-chested, and, to Kate, beautiful. His skin gleams. One of the 3 girls, the one named Carrie Ann, lays naked between the soft sheets. Her hair spirals out behind her, and she touches Jack with hands that should have been Kate's. She cannot hear what they say to each other, although she can imagine. Kate feels a burning in her heart, a fire starting up of its own accord. She pushes away from the wall and heads to the next lit room. The other 2 girls, part of the 3, sit cross-legged on a bed. The bed has stuffed animals lined all in a row, and a pretty satin cover. The girls play cards and smile at each other, the way lovers do. One reaches out to touch the other's hair, a delicate caress. They kiss, a deep kiss, full of illicit passion. Kate realizes she knows the secrets of the others as well as her own, and that it is not just her who had stayed behind after all. Her cord judders, a warning. It begins to turn hot in her hands. She follows the shortening tether back to her room, back through the window, back to her body. She settles back inside herself like a pair of comfortably worn pajamas. Kate opens her eyes, her bodily eyes, and smiles. The next morning, she feels famished, as if she hasn't eaten for days. She tries to recall if that's true or not, and realizes it probably is. She wonders where she can get food from. The vending machine? Steal from the empty, unstaffed kitchen? The idea of finding someone else's food to eat repels her from her bed. She collects all the change she can find and scampers down the stairs. She's afraid to come across the 3 girls. Kate wants to remain hidden and invisible until everybody is back. Safety in numbers, anonymity in a crowd. She makes it to the kitchen, fills her metallic flask with stolen coffee, and takes a tub of cheese sandwiches. She finds potato chips and chocolate in the vending machine, and counts out her coins to buy them.
I didn't know you were here, freak.
A nasal voice speaks from behind her. Kate jumps and tries hard not to react. She knows the voice. She feels the tone crack her insides wide open.
Nobody at home wants you? Can't say I blame them.
Carrie Ann stands at the foot of the stairs, with her hand on the acorn carving on the banister. She looks and behaves as if she is the queen of the manor, which Kate supposes she is. She has pretty blue eyes that like to peer into the business and lives of others. I'm studying, Kate mumbles.
Huh, it speaks.
Jack appears abruptly. He looks at the 2 women, eyes back and forth like a tennis match.
Hi, Kate. You're not leaving?
He asks.
Her family doesn't want her. Nobody does. She got dumped here. I saw her family speed off in relief.
Leave her be, Carrie. She doesn't bother anyone.
She bothers me. The freak.
Kate feels her heart thud at Jack defending her. Her cheeks fill with fire.
Kate, we'll all be in the lounge tonight. Just to smoke and a drink with a few friends. You can join us,
he says. Carrie Ann's blue eyes widen, and she blinks rapidly with heavily cold eyes. A snarl crosses her pretty, perfect features. A challenge. A dare.
Yes, join us. What fun that'll be.
Her voice drips with sarcasm. No, thank you, Kate replies. She turns back to the vending machine and pops the coins in, trying to distract herself.
Come on, Jack. There's a bad smell in here,
she hears Carrie Ann say. Jack tuts, but all the same, shrugs and follows his girlfriend. The two argue in heavy whispers. The Queen is displeased. Kate leans her head on the cool machine, suddenly desperate to lock herself in her room. She can sense chaos coming, almost as if the scent of imminent horror itself is in the air. She leaves her chocolate laying abandoned in the machine and runs, racing back to her room. She slams the door behind her and tries to catch her breath. I hate it here. I hate it so much. And everyone hates me. For the 100th time, she thinks about leaving. She thinks about running and finding a solitary life within a crowd of strangers. She thinks about going home and remembers she can't. My family is afraid of me. I can't go home. They hate me too. Kate slides down the door and lands in a tangle on the cheap plain carpet. She wishes she were nothing. She wishes she were dead. Although she knows full well that there is no such thing. At age 7, Kate learned to fly. I can fly all the way up to the stars, she told her parents. They grinned at her and nodded, happy to play along. Of course you can, sweetheart. They smiled and rolled their eyes. At age 10, Kate had proudly told her babysitter, Mary, that she could see her in her bedroom while she slept.
How nice,
Mary told her, laughing along with the childish game. It's true, Kate said. You have a pink bed cover and a poster of New Kids on the Block. You have a cream dresser, and red nail varnish is spilled on the surface. Your dog Willow can see me. Mary stopped babysitting. At age 13, Kate told her mother that her father sneaked out of the house to visit a woman down the street late at night, and she knew what they did. Her father left. At 14, she woke her mother in the night to tell her that grandmother was lying on her own kitchen floor dead. Her mother ran 2 blocks to her grandmother's house, let herself in, and found her body stone cold dead on the kitchen floor. Kate was sent to boarding school. Kate was sent to college. Kate was not allowed home. She had no real idea of why she could travel out of her body or how. For Kate, shedding her earthly self had become as routine as taking off her clothes at the end of the day. She did not believe she died each night. She did not wake up exhausted each morning, only hungry. She did not entirely know where she traveled to. She only knew it was the same world and daily life that she explored. Only, it was different too. She called it the Void, although the name never quite fit. A reflection, an inversion, a shadow world, a gray ripple of the real world, a place that defied reality with pleasure. On occasion, she'd see others. Blobs of darker gray prowled the landscape, clumsy stick figures walking along as if they'd stepped straight out of a child's drawing. Kate even saw a clockwork dog once, absurdly chasing its own mechanical tail. Spiderwebs hung in trees, thick webbing as thick as rope. Fires burned in empty cities, and once, rain fell that she could feel. Ancient winged beasts roamed the skies, while the odd human-shaped figures wandered back and forth endlessly. The void was the home of many oddities. Kate sometimes felt the shadow world was a place between places. A gap stuck or formed in the middle of separate layers of real worlds. A landscape of mistakes, or a world for those who slipped through the cracks. The world without, the world of the void, is the one Kate craves to belong in. She stands and crosses to her desk, eats her stolen sandwich, and switches her computer on. She checks her email while she chews thoughtfully. Nothing. No happy Thanksgiving messages. She switches the machine off and gazes outside instead. She watches the drip of gentle rain until it starts to pour. Kate wants a shower, but she doesn't dare risk running into the 3 girls. I smell. I need a shower. They'll all be downstairs. It's fine. I'll be fine. Decision made. She scrambles for fresh clothes. She finds some flannel pajamas and grabs her dressing gown and towel before she lets herself change her mind. The shared bathroom is 6 doors down. She counts them off and touches each door for luck as she passes. Her ritual works. The bathroom is empty. She chooses a stall and turns the water on. She only has soap, but someone has left a bottle of shampoo. She takes a bit, even though she knows she shouldn't. The smell of apple and mango hits her as she froths up her hair. The water feels glorious on her cold skin as she washes. For the first time in days, she feels warm. She catches sight of a blonde head as she turns the shower off and wraps herself in a towel. Which one is she? She thinks. She knows the head belongs to one of the 3 girls, but she can't decide which. Kate forces her wet arms into her gown, intent on leaving and getting dressed in her room.
I didn't know anyone else stayed,
the girl's husky voice says.
Oh, it's you.
Amber. Kate remembers and conjures her name. She's the prettiest one of the 3. One of the 2 girls she'd seen kissing last night. I'm studying, Kate says.
Okay, cool, whatever.
Amber stares at herself in the steamy mirror and leans forward to apply more lipstick. She has a jaded, tired look that Kate finds unsettling. She wonders if she has it too. It's okay, you know, to be whoever you want to be, Kate whispers. As soon as the words fly out, she regrets it. She forgets she doesn't know how to speak to others correctly. She forgets that people are repelled by her. Forgets that she should stay silent. Her stomach drops as her pulse quickens. Acid collects in her throat. Amber hisses. The huskiness turns to a growl.
What are you talking about?
Nothing. I saw you and her. No, forget it.
Saw me and who? What are you trying to accuse me of?
Nothing.
Have you been spying on us? Carrie-Ann is right, you are a freak.
Amber spits the last word out and takes a threatening step toward her.
Stay away from us. Seriously.
Amber jabs her hard in the chest. Sorry, Kate whispers, her cheeks aflame.
Carrie-Ann hates you. We all do.
Amber seethes.
It's about time you got what you deserve.
Kate feels cold all over again. She yanks at the door and runs back to her room. She feels for her keys and unlocks the door. Her hands are shaking. I'm useless. I am absolutely useless. I'm never leaving this room again. Why did I say anything? She climbs into her bed and covers herself. More than anything else, she wants to sleep. She wants to leave her body and explore the only world she feels safe in. Kate doesn't realize she's left her door unlocked, with her keys on the outside for all to see. Within an hour, she's deeply asleep. At least, her body is. Another part of her begins to rise. Her ascent this time is quick. Intention and need are her fuel, as she lifts up out into the starry sky. For the first time, Kate wonders if the stars are the same in the void world as in the earthly realm. She tries to remember the patterns, shapes, and twists of the pinprick lights so she can compare the two constellations. She feels her tether pull. It jolts her, sending her whirling backwards as if it were an elastic cord. She feels as if she's an astronaut on a spacewalk. Below her, thick gray swirls cluster in the car park. To Kate, up high, they resemble ink blots. She ignores them and speeds away. She twists and twirls, somersaults and whoops with silent joy. Freedom. True freedom, she thinks. She wonders how she can think with no physical brain. She laughs in exhilaration and wonders what her professor would say if he were there to see her now. The lounge lights in the dormitory glow. They pull at Kate to investigate, but she resists the urge, ignores it. She plummets in a dive, holding out her misty arms. She slams on imaginary brakes and stops. She is hung, ghost-like, over the spider-webbed covered car. I hope I never see what makes those. In the distance, a new sound. One she has never heard inside the void before. Whispers. The calm, soothing sound of secrets whispered between lovers. Kate glances around and spins. Her strange world appears empty. The lounge light pulls her again. A soft pull of apprehension. She glides over and places her misty hand on the steamy old window. The room appears empty at first. Discarded beer cans lay on the wooden floor. Throws and blankets are scattered around. A single graceful feminine calf and foot poke out from the worn sofa. Kate has the urge to knock on the window. Would anyone even hear me? For her own amusement, she knocks. Her misty fist makes contact with the glass. But there is no sound. Not even a dull, underwater thud. Before Kate has time to think about it, the window fills with Jack. She gasps and jolts back. Her heart aches when she sees that he looks upset. He closes his eyes briefly and lowers his head. He speaks words Kate cannot hear. Feels emotions Kate cannot touch. He raises his arms to close the two thin curtains, and she sees blood. Blood stains all over his hands. Alarm rattles through her. A shiver races through her ghostly form. Is he hurt? Kate spins, unsure of what to do. Through the haze of the curtains, she sees Carrie Ann strutting peacock-like into the room. She throws her beautiful head back in a throaty laugh. She stumbles, drunk, high, euphoric. Amber follows with her graceful dancer's walk. The jaded look has left her, and in its place is madness, anger, passion, and triumph. Kate turns bitter cold. An emptiness takes a hold of her. It starts in her heart and spreads out in thick tendrils. Quick and complete desperation. She looks down at her stomach. Her cord has lost its shimmer. Powder falls from it as if disintegration has set in, even rot. Panic overwhelms her. She swoops inside, up the stairs, and along the endless hallway. She knows. She feels it with every atom of her being. She passes through the wall and sees her sleeping body. No, not sleeping. Her small body lies as if dreaming. A pillow, her favorite pink one, sits on top of her face. Stab wounds cover her chest. 4 holes, 4 betrayals. Her tether falls away completely. Lost. Gone. Why? She screams silently. Why would they do this to me? She lays discarded, as if she were an unwanted doll. Abandoned. Dead. Murdered. A weight settles in. Her lightness leaves her. Her mist takes form. Human form. Solid. Gray. A shadow with texture. Kate tries to run. She hits her closed door. Trapped. Stuck. Solid. Imprisoned. She cries, but she isn't heard. She wails, but she isn't noticed. She pulls at the door and runs, still unseen by those around her. Her feet slap on the hard, cold floor and out. Running, still broken inside. She looks for a place to hide, a place to think, a place to curl up and scream. Now, the descending whispers recede. Challenged by Kate's fury, they jerk back in one hive-minded fast motion. Black passion grows inside. The rips of her soul remain. The holes gape open. Still, she stands. A scream of rage jerks her body. Her anger is a force, a growing power. Her needs and wants become focused. Swirls of whispers circle her, like a school of fish, waiting, watching. She screams again. This time, the sound travels far. Kate is heard. Her mind sees images, flickers of faces. Enemies, foes, adversaries, nemesis. 3 girls, she thinks. She cannot recall who they are, or why she should feel such brutal hate, only that she does. Kate cannot feel anything else outside of vengeance. Her heavy body becomes lighter. The solid meat and flesh of her bones fall like ash. Kate becomes a mist. She knows the feeling. A familiar soft glove. Whispers recede. Each scatters and hides like fallen marbles. Despair, revenge, justice. She craves destruction. A shimmer of blue light, a pulse. The only color in the gray world forms in her chest. Kate remembers. Her heart feels beaten. Her mind is a labyrinth. Her spirit battered, her soul twisted. Swirls of patterns whirlwind around her. A darkness forms at the edges. A blade of black pierces her, pulls her apart, and reorganizes in a moment. Kate remembers she can fly. Memories flood her, and her wooden chest of secrets open wide. She lifts. She leaves the abandoned house. It was never her prison. Her place to hide, after all. She rockets toward a bleak, unnatural sky. She sees white, the purest, whitest light she's ever seen. She stops. No, 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 no. She plummets down, 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 until the surface of the ground readies itself to swallow. She freezes, she swoops, she searches, she finds. The campus. Her campus. A dollhouse of stone. Her traitorous pretend home. The site of her death. The culprits inside. One glow of light sparkles. It shines like a lighthouse. A signal just for her. She dashes forward. Straight through the window, an arrow streaking out from the curtains. Kate finds herself in the student lounge. She stops. She waits as a tangle of black rage spirals around her. Jack sits by the fire. Half his face is lit by a warm orange glow. He stares at the flames, deep in concentration. Carrie-Anne dances. Her hands run smoothly over her body as she moves to the music only she can hear. She opens one eye to check if she's being watched by Jack or by her friends. Amber watches her cat-like from the sofa. Her eyes are narrowed in interest. In her hand is an almost empty bottle of vodka. Lisa sits shivering, wrapped in a blanket, a thick joint between her shaking fingers. No one senses the change in the room, the sudden chill, the sudden scent of the other.
We're going to prison,
Lisa states abruptly. All eyes land on her. To Kate, their voices are echoed, far away, muffled.
All we do is say, we didn't see a thing. We were all down here, together. I'll report a prowler later. I'll do it now.
Carrie-Anne laughs alone. The sound is stubbornly tinny.
I can't lie.
Jack says.
You killed her.
He jabs a finger at Carrie-Anne and Amber.
You two. You're sick. I hate you. I'm not covering this up.
Darling, if you don't do as I say, you'll lose your scholarship. Fail a drug test, too. Your daddy will beat you black and blue. Again.
Carrie-Anne sings.
You made more of a mess trying to revive her.
She was a bitch. A nasty freak. She knew things she shouldn't.
Amber yells and starts to laugh wildly, while Lisa cries. Jack stands and puffs out his chest. He starts to speak, but his mouth opens and closes, silent. A fish without air. Feelings are the language of the souls, Kate thinks. The conversation in front of her is dull. A hissing sound starts up in her ears, anger brimming to the boil. A black-hot frenzy bubbles, a crescendo of wrath. Static fills her mind. Kate screams a high-pitched scream, one made purely from rage. The people in her sight, with their evil and selfishness that flourishes inside, become her target of fury. Kate jerks toward the four of them. Amber senses her, but too late. Kate focuses her revenge into her fist until her misty self takes solid form. She punches Amber's chest. She feels skin and tissue separate as easily as butter. She feels bones crack and open. She feels the hum and beat of a warm heart. She pulls, yanks. She holds the stolen heart high, as if she's won a bloody, gruesome trophy, and roars. Amber's eyes open impossibly wide and cloud over. She sways back. Her vodka bottle falls and rolls lazily away. Carrie-Anne shrieks. She throws her manicured hands up to her face in horror. Now, it is Kate who laughs. The mirror over the fireplace wavers and shatters. The sound seems like 1,000 tortured screams sent straight from hell itself. Shards of sharpness pierce faces and bodies. Lisa screeches and throws herself onto the floor. Carrie-Anne chokes. A blade of glass sticks out of her delicate neck. Blood trickles as she holds it in place. Kate grips the end and tugs it jaggedly across her throat. Blood spurts out in a flood, a gurgle, a fountain, a river of warm life seeping away. Carrie-Anne's face cracks apart like an old and broken porcelain doll. Murderer, Kate whispers as Carrie-Anne falls. She feels certain she's been heard this time, seen and heard. Kate turns to Jack, to his pale and milk-white terrified face. A dark spot stains his jeans on the front. His shaking legs betray him as he falls to his knees.
Please, God, please,
he says. Kate feels sure that God has nothing to do with it. Her darkness spirals and twists around her. She is engulfed by brutal, pure hate. There is no place for redemption in her mind. No corner in which hope or pity might lurk. Only the clarity of fury. She has become something more. Kate's ghost-like fingers stroke his face gently. A bitter caress. She runs her hand down to his throat and squeezes. The power inside her shatters his windpipe, crushes bone and cartilage, and severs nerves in one ruthless swipe. Jack falls face down. His beautiful features quickly turn blue. One remains. She turns to Lisa. The girl tries to stand, tries to run, to flee, to leave.
I didn't do anything!
She screams. Kate yanks her hair and halts her in place. Her hand reaches inside her skull and finds warmth, the center of being. There is no resistance when she pulls. Her temporary form feels stickiness, feels life. Lisa's scream penetrates her mind until she screams in return. 4 bodies lay in various tangles. 4 dead betrayers. Murderers and accomplices all. A stillness settles over Kate. A silence. She thinks of her body, and without meaning to move, finds herself transported to her single room, gazing down at her former self. For a small moment, she feels a pang of sadness. For her, the world was always too dark, no matter how many lights she used. She knows that no one will miss her. No tears will be shed for her. She repelled others, those who sensed she walked in 2 worlds. Her death will be nothing more than an inconvenience. She resigns herself to the fact that maybe in death, people will talk kindly about her, more kindly than they ever did in her short life. Kate remembers she can fly. She floats up, slowly at first, until she flies at speed. With no tether, she can explore the world she inhabits. She can watch the burning cities, explore and feel unafraid if the whispers draw near. She can find others, ones who slip through the gaps, others that don't belong in her world. Her world is for oddities, the discarded, the broken, the rejected. The void is for her. She turns, spins to see her last view of the campus. She sees 4 figures crowded and huddled near the main door. Lost, broken, punished, frightened souls. She can smell their despair, taste their fear. Kate laughs a gentle laugh. She will send the whispers and the blacker-than-black ink blots their way. She will lead the flying things directly to them. She pushes on. She thinks of her cord, her anchor. It was a chain that bound. She is lighter than light. She is glad. She is free.
I hope you enjoyed The Void, as written by Sarah Jane Huntington and performed by Danielle Hewitt, featuring myself, Steve Taylor, Rissa Montanez, Olivia Steele, Erik Peabody, and Michelle Kane. Both of tonight's tales come to us from our friends over at Velox. Check out these authors and many more by visiting www.veloxbooks.com. Well, on to the shows. Longtime resident Otis Jiry has his very own show here on our network, Scary Stories Told in the Dark, which you can hear every Sunday night. We also have Erik Peabody's Horror Hill, a podcast dedicated to some of our deeper and darker tales. We hope you check him out. Andrew Blood's Dark Tales airs Friday, featuring some southern down-home horror. And don't forget to check out The Fear from the Heartland Archives, featuring more than 120 episodes. Well, friends, our weekly descent into the depths has just about come to a close. But before we go, I'd like to take a moment to thank you for joining us for tonight, and remind you to take a moment to stop by our iTunes page and leave Chilling Tales for Dark Nights a 5-star review and a kind word, and follow us on Facebook, X, and Instagram if you haven't already. And of course, subscribe to us on YouTube, where you can find an archive of our work going back to 2012. And consider signing up as a patron at our website, chillingtalesfordarknights.com, to show your support and get all of our content ad-free. I'm your host of the evening, Steve Taylor, and it's been a pleasure. Tune in again next week when we once again turn off the lights and turn on the dark. Sweet dreams, listener. Sweet dreams.
Chilling Tales for Dark Nights.
This episode of Chilling Tales for Dark Nights is brought to you by Mood. Summer's almost over, but don't let it get you down. Hell, I don't even care what season it is anymore. I'm stoned. And you can be too with our good friends at Mood. Mood has the best lineup of federally legal THC products on the market, from their amazingly potent THCA flower to their vapes, edibles, and other options. They've got everything both beginner and veteran users could hope for. But here's what makes Mood so special. Their in-house experts select from 10 high-inducing strains to make products with special properties. Everything from energize to chill. Mood puts an end to guessing games and gives you just the feeling that you're after. You can shop by category, mood, and potency. Time to get friendly? Try some of their new Social Nano THC syrup. Splash in your favorite beverage? You'll be working the room like a champ. Time to get extra friendly? Try their new Sexual Euphoria THC gummies. They contain ingredients known to boost libido and arousal. I don't need to tell you what you'll be doing after that. I love Mood's sleepy and chill products myself. Perfect to wind down whatever the season. But hey, while we've still got some summer left, let you and me have a couple of Delta 9 THC freezer pops, huh? That's 20 milligrams of happy Delta 9 THC and 20 milligrams of calming CBD. Straight to the dome. Cheers! And don't forget to use code CHILLING. Already missing summer before it's over? Run it back with 20% off your first order and free gummies. Go to HelloMood.com and use promo code CHILLING. That's HelloMood.com code CHILLING for 20% off your order and free gummies. Thanks for your support and for supporting our valuable sponsors.